Hello everyone, welcome back to Powerful Nothing and Magic the Gathering Cube podcast. I'm your host Dan, and as always, I'm joined by James. James, we're back to Strixhaven. Are you excited for this week's episode?
Oh, we are so back. Strixhaven's great. Loved it first time round. This set looks like a bit of a banger, actually, so can't wait to jump in, actually. It got pre-release on Friday. It's going to be very cool. Excited to play with some new cards and talk about them for Cube here.
Yeah, this set does look a lot of fun. Like, the draft and sealed environment also looks awesome. Obviously, we have the cool, awesome new cards, and then we've got the mystical archives as well, showing up in boosters again. So this should be a good one. And yeah, this will be part one of our Cube set review. Today, we are going to be going over white, blue, black, and red. Next week, we'll be going over red, multicolored, and colorless. So do make sure you subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star review so you're notified when the episode comes out. While you're doing that, while you're down there in the notes, there will also be timecodes if you want to jump around to specific colours. And there will also be a card gallery where we'll show every card we talk about if you're listening to the episode. There will also be a link to a video version if you want to see the whole thing move around and some nice pretty pictures, all that good stuff. In terms of our set review, there's one last thing we need to touch on, and that's how we're going to be reviewing the cards. Because when we do these set reviews, we're comparing every card in this set to every card that's ever been printed before it. Because that is the pool of cards that we use to make cubes. In terms of those cubes, it's probably worth us breaking down how we're going to be talking about cards, and importantly, the types of cubes out there. When we talk about cubes, it's normally in terms of things like power level, restrictions, and size. For power level, we're basically trying to decide the pool of cards that the rest of the cube is picked from. So an entry-level cube we often describe as low-powered or budget. There's a lot of cool cards that you might run, but generally they're looking for fun games rather than doing broken things really quickly. Think of these as somewhere, but from a power level point of view, between a regular set draft and a master's set. That is the pool of cards that will generally go in these types of cubes. You then have your mid-powered cubes. The games are getting a little faster, there's better fixing, you start seeing more staples. You see cards like Lightning Bolt, Counterspell, maybe like improved lands like Fetch Lands, and previously these might have been known as Standard, Modern, or Legacy cubes. You then have the real high-powered cubes. They're generally environments that are optimized to run the best cards possible. The games are powerful and the decks need to be more focused, and you have to be doing a thing. In these cubes, in terms of speed, if you go land go for 3 turns, you've probably lost that game. Like, the best example of high-powered cubes is the Mitgo Vintage Cube or the Arena-powered cube. When it comes to restrictions, the most common that you generally find are Pauper, which is a cube using only commons, and Peasant, which is a cube using only uncommons. In terms of size, the general idea that we work with is that the smaller the cube is, the higher average card quality is. Like, for example, in a 360 cube where with 8 players you are drafting every card. Whereas with larger cubes like 540 or 720, there is room for less optimal cards, and you're often looking for duplicate of effects. So if we say a card could see play in a 720 cube, it probably means there's a card that does the same thing more efficiently, and we might want to run this as an extra version of that card. Also worth touching on, finally, that me and James have a bunch of cubes that we might mention during this episode. James has a powered cube, which is running all the broken cards that you want, and he has a dual commander cube. Similar sort of power level, but it does have more commander focus to it. I have an unpowered vintage cube, which is running a lot of the broken cards, but not the most broken, so mine doesn't have any power in it, for example. And I also have the Treat Yourself cube, which is a slower, more dirtly cube. They're still doing powerful things, but it's not doing them until turns like 4 to 6. So if we mention cards to go in our cubes, those are the ones that we're talking about. Right, but with that, James, take it away with our first card of the day. The first white card is Daydream.
Yeah, for sure. So Daydream is a single white mana for sorcery. It says exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. And it has Flashback, which is a returning mechanic in this set for 2 and a white, so you can cast it for 2 and a white out of your graveyard and then exile it. This is like kind of a tough sell for me. The instants and sorceries that just flicker your creatures are already a bit tough to justify putting them in your deck, right? Because even if you're doing the flicker thing, you know, you have creatures that can do that, and these aren't creatures, they aren't removal spells, they don't attack, they don't block, they need some setup, right? But why you can sometimes make them work is they have a little bit more flexibility than just proactively casting them in your main phase on your creature, right? The instant speed ones, you can hold up, save your creature from removal, get it out of combat after a shunt block, stuff like that. This being sorcery, therefore, I think really, really hurts it, because it means you're just kind of locked into that, right? It's my main phase, I'm just going to tap my mana, put this on the stack, hope nothing bad happens to my creature, and even if that all works, it doesn't feel like getting paid off that much. Plus, on top of that, like, it doesn't work with stuff like Evoke, which is a really nice little combination for the instant speed flicker stuff. So yeah, I think this one for me, kind of a tough sell. Like, Flashback is nice, the counters are not nothing, but I think sorcery speed is a bit too big of a hit for me.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. Specifically in like generic cubes that are just kind of running like I run Ephemerate in my normal cube because it does some cool stuff with the pitch elementals on top of protecting your spells from like Doomblades and that kind of stuff. Like, I do think though, if you are specifically running a Flicker deck, then I think this will see play. Like, Flicker is a very popular archetype in a bunch of like mid and lower powered level cubes because it's fun, and it's something that kind of like quite obvious that like Azorius is quite good at, and it is a single white mana, and like specifically if you are like, or specifically Ephemerate is clearly like top tier of the list in terms of good ones here, but like after that there is a bit of a drop off. Like, there's Cloud Shift, but you only get it once. Like, for me specifically, if you are really pushing, like if in your cube Azorius is doing Flicker, then I think Daydream is a perfectly fine card to get in.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess once we're past Ephemerate and Ghostly Flicker, I'm probably looking at sort of creatures that flicker stuff more than just instants and sorceries, because then, they do have a bit more of a backup plan, right?
No, I would agree. It's just. I think it's worth considering. Firstly, because it is also a uncommon, and it is just one mana. Though I do like my curve being quite low.
That is fair.
All right, but let's keep the ball rolling. The next card is Emeritus of Truce. This is a 1 white for a 3/3 creature cat cleric. It has, when this creature enters, target player creates a 1/1 white and black inkling creature token with flying. Then, if an opponent controls more creatures than you, this creature becomes prepared. This is our first time seeing prepared. What could this mean? So, while it's prepared, you may cast a copy of its spell. Doing so unprepares it. But what's the spell? The spell is Sword to Plowshares. It's literally Swords to Plowshares. When Emeritus of Truce is prepared, you can cast Sword to Plowshares for a single white. It's an instant. Exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. So, there is a whole cycle of these Emerituses in this set. I think we're probably reviewing all of them, and a bunch of other cards with this prepared mechanic that lets them cast a spell as well. I'm going to be honest, like, having Swords to Plowshares on a creature, in theory, is really quite strong. I'm going to go to James in a minute, who's going to tell me why I'm wrong, but I'm not a massive fan of this card. Like, in an ideal world, we play this for 3 mana. Our opponent has 3 more creatures than us. We get this, we get the flyer, and we get the removal spell. When you're behind, this does do a fantastic job of stabilizing us. Like, in those environments, it could almost be a 3-for-1, because we kind of trade off 1 card for 3 of their things if blocks go well, all that kind of stuff. But if we're at parity or ahead, if you want to cast this spell for 3 mana, if you want to cast a spell, it's 3 mana for a 3/3 with a flying token. Like, we don't get the opportunity to prepare it afterwards. It's only when it enters. And my gut is that just like the majority of white decks, white is a creature-heavy color. I could just see this coming down a bunch of times where we just don't get the ability to cast Swords to Plowshares. And at that point, what would I rather have? This, where like sometimes I might get Swords to Plowshares, or a card like Solitude, or a card like Skyclave Apparition, something like that. Something that guarantees me the removal spell. I'm not saying this is a bad card, and like it is a mythic in a standard set that casts a Swords to Plowshares. Like in certain decks, this will feel very pushed. Like in decks where you're winning with like Planeswalkers, or like your win condition is a Celestial Colonnade. Those will be really solid, but like my gut is that like in Commander, I think all of these are busted, but in one-on-one game of Cube, I'm not as high on this as I think other people are.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think it's like cracked or anything. I think, yeah, certainly nowhere near the power level of a Solitude or anything. But I do think the upside is really quite high. Yeah, that scenario you outlined where your opponent's running you over, this card is kind of absurd, right? You're going to spend 4 mana total, exile their best thing, leave yourself with a 3/3 and a 1/1 to block all on one card is kind of mad. In a scenario where you're at parity, maybe you have to give them the flyer and then you sword their good thing. That's still really powerful. You've come out pretty well from that exchange. And I guess I don't think that 3 mana for a 3/3 and a 1/1 flyer is that bad. Like, we've seen a card like Sanguine Evangelist do a ton of work, right? Like, Sanguine Evangelist is better than a 3/3, but it's, the evasion on the token is really nice.
True. I know. I still refuse to believe that's like one of the best cards in Magic, but the data has shown it's one of the best cards in Magic.
Yeah, statistically, guys, better than Black Lotus. Yeah, I know. I guess I think the downside isn't that bad when it doesn't work, and the upside's really good when it does. Yeah, not a busted card. I'm sure it is one people will try in a bunch of super powerful cubes. I don't know if it will stick around, but I think like certainly more sort of mid power can be nice. Yeah, certainly pushes you towards maybe like a blue-white deck a bit more. It's not its best in like the all-in white weenie for sure. But yeah, something with some planeswalkers looking to control the board a bit. I think it's quite good. The major knock on it for me is just the mana cost. Because it's 2 white pips to cast, and then if you want to cast the sword straight away, you're looking at triple white, which is pretty tough. Yeah, I'd be a lot higher on it if it was 2 and a white to cast. But I think the card's like worth a try, regardless.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think just some notes on this card type. Like, we will see more of them as we go through. Worth saying that, what you said about you needing triple white to do everything, I think is very important because if they remove this creature, you don't, like, even if it's prepared, if they remove the creature, you don't then get to cast the Swords to Plowshares later. Like, the Swords to Plowshares is linked to the card being on the battlefield. So if your opponent has a removal spell, they've just found a target, and then you don't get the value of the removal spell. Like there is a terrible situation where like you play this card, you give them the 1/1, and then they Doomblade it. Like, that isn't, like, that's quite bad. But like there will be a conversation in terms of like what is the prepared cost on all of these cards, and also it's worth mentioning as well, a bunch of them will trigger like when they enter in some way, so they do get better with Flicker as well, because if you can flicker this, like this in Daydream seems quite solid because you can flicker it, then because the prepared ability triggers on it entering, if you flicker it, you can look at it again, basically. And they don't all work that way, but the ones I'm higher on do.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is actually a great point of there are a lot of these prepared creatures that just enter prepared, right? So you don't get the opportunity to kill it before they can use the attached spell. This, even though it can become prepared right away, there is a trigger on the stack to give them or you the 1/1, and then when that trigger resolves, it can become prepared. So they do get an opportunity to kill it and deny you the Swords to Plowshares, which is a very real knock against the card for sure.
Cool. But yeah. It's definitely one that I think deserves to test, and people will test it. My gut is this will be one of the rotate into Mitgo Vintage Cube, come out soon afterwards style of cards. But if you're, from my end, I think if you're doing Flicker, it gets a lot better. But James, our next card, we're probably not going to be talking about it for too long, just because it's very, very good, which is a weird thing to say. But talk to us about Erode.
Yeah, for sure. Erode is a single white mana for an instant. It says destroy target creature or planeswalker. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put it onto a battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So for those of you who've been playing Magic as long as I have, or as long as most people have, so basically Path to Exile, instead of instead of exiling the creature, it destroys, but you have the upside of you can hit planeswalkers. This card we're going to see in cubes for a long time. It's really powerful. I think Path to Exile is simultaneously very good and slightly overrated.
Yeah.
I think people view it a bit too much like Swords to Plowshares, and Path is great late. It is not good early. You can't really swords on like the first couple of turns of the game without giving your opponent a huge advantage. Path to Exile on the first couple of turns of the game without giving your opponent a huge advantage. Same obviously applies with this. It is a cheap removal spell, but it actually doesn't stop you getting run over that well. What it is phenomenal for is those really efficient multi-spell terms in the mid to late game. You go turn 4, you erode their 4-drop and cast your own 3-drop. That's a huge swing. Whether this is better or worse than Path is going to very much depend on the cube. Obviously, if you have more creatures that care about being in the graveyard, then Path is likely to be better. But if you have a bunch of planeswalkers in the cube, then this will probably be better. But you can absolutely run both. They're both really good.
Yeah, my honest opinion is like every cube that's running just like efficient cards, this is just becomes a slam dunk. Like we now run swords, we run Path, and we run erode as well. Like it's cube staple, run it in your cubes.
Yeah, for sure. You see a lot of cubes running stuff like Get Lost, for one that gives them the maps. Like that seems like it's waiting to be cut for this card now, you know?
I mean, Oust, James.
Oust is so good. Oust is so good. You're all so wrong about Oust.
What would you rather have, Oust or this? Or are you cutting are you cutting an instant speed one for this, or are you cutting Oust that is a sorcery?
I don't know if this is a hot take. I think Oust is better than Path to Exile. Like, in Powered Cube specifically, those games are so much about the early turns. They're so quick, and you just can't be pathing people's stuff on turn 1. Like, if they cast a Ragavan, do you want or a Birds of Paradise on turn 1? Do you want to have an Oust or a Path to Exile?
Let us know in the comments what you think is better, dear listener, Oust or Path to Exile.
I will die on this hill.
Okay. Okay, good. I love that for you. All right, let's keep it going. We have a lot of cool cards to get through today. Our last white card, though, is Informed Inkwright. It is 1 and a white for a 2/2 creature human wizard with vigilance and repartee. It's our first time seeing this ability, but it says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature, create a 1/1 white and black inkling creature token with flying. So repartee is, think of it kind of like a weird heroic. Like you don't have to target specifically the creature with heroic, but it doesn't trigger off of auras. Similar, but different.
Yeah, it does trigger off targeting your opponent's stuff as well.
Yes, which is nice. Yeah. It does trigger off of removal, which is nice. It doesn't work with counter magic because it's not a creature, but it does work with your Doom Blades, your Erodes, and the like. It does work with that, which is quite nice. In terms of this card, I think it's okay. Like in regular cubes, like cards like Monastery Mentor, and the like have kind of been power crept out of a lot of cubes. This one is cheaper, and it does make flyers, which is quite nice. My gut is that it won't make enough tokens to get in over other good white 2-drops. But specifically in the cubes that are doing the like Feather the Redeemed, Zada, I cast spells that buff up a creature, maybe also draws a card. Like a lot of you are leaning into the effects that target your own creatures. Like not just this incidentally making new creatures when you interact with your opponent's stuff. Like when you're actively trying to play buff effects, play cantrips that target your own creatures, this does get quite a lot nicer, and I like it a bit more. Like that is an archetype that does see a fair bit, does see some play in lower powered and more budget cubes. It overlaps really nicely with Spellslinger, which is nice. But I think you just really my guy, it's a fine card, but to get the most out of it, you want it in a cube where there's like a lot of pump spells in your red and white sections. It's kind of where I'm seeing it like really shining.
Yeah, I think it could definitely work there. I kind of feel like it has another home, though, in the more like mid-power level cube, where they're kind of just like, here's a bunch of good cards. I think a strategy that can be pretty effective is just like, I'm 3 colors, here's like a giant pile of removal spells, and I'm just going to attrition you out. And in that deck, I think this is pretty strong.
Is it like a Mardu card then, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's that sort of vibe, like just attrition-y Mardu nonsense. And because in that deck, this is better than like a Young Pyromancer, I think, because almost all the instants and sorceries in that deck are going to target, and this makes flyers.
How does this work with Fire Covenant? Does it work really well?
I think you still only get 1, right? Because it's whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature.
So it's not per target.
Spell. Yeah, it's per spell, not per target, sadly.
Okay, reasonable. But still, if you're 1-for-1ing removal, then yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But way less good in a blue deck, because it doesn't trigger off like cantrips, and it doesn't trigger off counters, as you mentioned.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I was thinking it more in the Jeskai spectrum, but I guess the Mardu spectrum a bit more keen on the death side of things. So yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I could see Inform Incrite going in something like that. That's cool. Right, but moving on to Blue, James. Talk to us about Emeritus of Ideation.
That's the pronunciation I was going to go with. Yeah.
Right. This one seems a little spicy, James.
This one's a cool one, yeah. So Emeritus of Ideation is 3 blue, so 5 mana total, for a 5/5 creature human wizard with flying and ward 2. Says this creature enters prepared, so no trigger, it just comes in, it's prepared right away. Also says whenever this creature attacks, you may exile 8 cards from your graveyard. If you do, this creature becomes prepared. So as a reminder, you can't sort of prepare twice. Once it's prepared, you have to cast the attached spell, and that will unprepare it, but then after that point, you could re-prepare it and then cast a spell again. So what is that attached spell, you say? Well, it's a single blue mana. It seems quite powerful. It's called Ancestral Recall. And
it seems good.
It seems quite pushed, actually. Yeah, it's a single blue mana. It says target player draws 3 cards.
Jesus,
I think this could have some applications actually. Yeah. This spell.
It has applications as a proxy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is cool. Honestly, like anytime they get to print Ancestral Recall on a card in 2026, I think is like pretty dope.
Yeah, this is sweet.
Yeah, and this card's pretty good, I think. So it's 5 mana to cast, but you really want to wait till you get to 6, right? Because then you can cast this, it enters, it's already prepared, and you can just cast the Ancestral right away. You obviously, there are times where you'll have to just play it and not have the blue up to cast the Ancestral, but you're going to feel pretty bad if you just cast this, don't have mana up, and they kill it.
They will kill this.
Yeah. Yes, it has ward 2, but by the time you're casting 5 drops, there's a decent chance.
They will pay the ward, trust me.
Yeah. But yeah, as a 6-drop, this seems kind of great. Like 6 mana 5/5 flyer, draw 3 cards is a pretty great place to be. And then plus, if you ever attack with this, and you're probably not a million miles off 8 cards in the graveyard, seems pretty powerful. I think if you ever draw the second lot of 3 cards, it's pretty much over, to be honest, isn't it? 6 drops go like this. Really puts something like Consecrated Sphinx to shame, doesn't it? Which admittedly hasn't been good for a while, but I think this is cool. Having said that, it is a blue 6 mana creature that isn't like winning the game on the spot. So that probably rules it out for like super powerful cubes. I kind of like the idea of oathing into this. I think could be quite cool.
Ooh,
because when you hit it off oath, you have it enters and you have all your mana untapped, right? So you can cast your Ancestral right away. You then cast the cards you draw off your Ancestral right away. Plus, your oath probably just dumps a bunch of cards in your graveyard. So if you do get to attack, you have your 8 cards to exile, and you can keep going. So that could be kind of sweet. But yeah, mostly this is a very big value E6 drop.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. My gut is that by the time you cast, like if you're casting this you're going to be close to having 8 cards in your graveyard, and also if you're not, you've just drawn 3 cards. So, I think this card's going to be pushed. I think this will see a fair decent play. Like I know that kind of to do the whole thing is 6 mana, but I'm just looking at kind of what powerful cubes are running in their 5 and 6 drop slots. Like it's like Quantum Riddler, Wan Shi Tong, All Knowing. I think we try this. Like I know those are 5 mana. Like the only 6 mana in both the Mythic Vintage Cube and the Arena Cube right now is Kappa Cannoneer. Like there must be room for. Like I'd be perfectly fine cutting Wan Shi Tong and slotting this in instead. Like. I think this one seems incredibly pushed, and people will want to play with it. Like what I like about a large portion of these Emeritus is that they are. I think some of them are good enough for high power level cubes, but the ones that aren't good enough for the high power level cubes, they kind of give that hint of power to a lower power level cube in a format that is okay. Like the fact that this is 6 mana to do this means that like a lower power level cube. This power level is fine there, but it's a thing of like I get to cast Ancestral Recall in my modern cube, for example, or I get to run this in my unpowered vintage cube. That kind of stuff. Like that is cool, and I think that's one of the biggest. Like that's one of the reasons why this card is pre-ordering for a lot of money, because a bunch of players want the ability to like, ooh, I can play Ancestral Recall. Worth mentioning as well with all of these, this is one that really does get better with Flicker. Like, if you can flicker this, draw another 3 cards without having to worry about the cards in your graveyard, really quite strong.
Yeah, the flicker's good. The one that really pops off, and admittedly this is a bit of setup, but if you ever have this and a Displacer Kitten in play,
ooh, yeah.
Like, you cast the Ancestral, Displacer Kitten triggers this, flickers this, you just keep Ancestraling as many times as you have blue mana to pay. And cards in your library, I suppose.
There is an obscene amount of cards that do really well with Displacer Kitten in this set. Like there is a red card that goes infinite with it that we're not talking about. I'll put it up on screen now. There's a card called Blazing Fire Singer in the set. We're not going to do it in the set review, but it enters prepared, and for 3 mana you can cast Seething Song. So that with the kitten is infinite red mana. That's kind of hot, but. Displacer Kitten has got a lot better from this set because of all these cool prepared creatures. So I guess buy your copies now, kids, is what I'm saying to you.
We do not offer financial advice.
No, we actively do not. I just spent 20 quid on used Lord of the Rings Warhammer. I should not be trusted.
Sounds like a great choice.
It was cheap because it was badly painted. But anyway, let's keep it going, James. But yeah. I think we're both high on Emeritus of Ideation. Very cool card. Let's keep it going, though. Next up, we have Exhibition Tidecaller. This is a single blue for an 0/2 creature Djinn Wizard with Opus, another new mechanic. This one says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, target player mills 3 cards. If 5 or more mana was spent to cast that spell, that player mills 10 cards instead. So the Opus part is casting an instant or sorcery, you get an effect. If you spend 5 or more mana on it, you get a bonus effect. So I do like this card. I like Seth Mill. There are decks that want to use your graveyard as a resource, like specifically like a spell-based deck. Like a card like Mizzix's Mastery is a really fun card. Like if you spend 8 mana to cast Mizzix's Mastery Overloaded, you get to cast all your instant and sorceries from your graveyard. And that seems quite good with this, like as a way of using the self-mill. Go with me on this, James. Like I do wonder how we can use this almost as like a second copy of Brain Freeze if we're doing the Underworld Breach, Lion's Eye Diamond stuff. Like it's nowhere near as neat, but there's a ton of ways of casting stuff out of our graveyard, and I think there might be something there.
Yeah, it goes pretty hard with Underworld Breach, because if you just have this and a Breach and any sort of mana neutral spells, so maybe a Ritual, maybe a Manamorphose, you can just cast this, cast your Ritual. It's going to mill you for free, so you can escape your Ritual again. You can keep going, mill. You'll probably still want to have a Storm card in your deck, but you don't have to find it because you'll eventually mill it over. And when you do, you'll have cast so many Rituals that it'll be lethal. You could try and do it where you sort of mill yourself a bit and then try and mill them, but it's a bit trickier, right? Because you're not actually going up cards in the graveyard each time. So I guess you're going up mana if it's a ritual, and then you can try and get into more cards somehow. But I think really the setup you want is you have a breach, you have this, you have some rituals, and then somewhere in your deck there is a storm card, whether that be a Tendrils or a Brain Freeze or whatever. And then that should be a pretty straightforward win. But as always with this sort of creature, the same thing applies to the Varls of this world and whatnot. It's just the question of, do you want to put a 1-mana O2 in your spell-based combo deck and rely on it living even for half a turn,
Mm-hmm. No, I'd agree. Yeah, it does seem a little tricky, and this also just has card that I will misplay tremendously written all over it.
Yeah.
The only other thing I did want to mention, because this is the first time seeing Opus, James, rules question for you. It does specifically say if 5 or more mana was spent to cast that spell, we get the bonus effect. How does that work with a card like Dream Halls or like a card that does alternate casting costs? Like, I'm assuming it doesn't work. Like alternate, like if we cast a spell for free, we're not spending any mana on it, or is it the mana in the top right hand corner? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, you can't really cheat this. It is mana spent to cast it. So if you pitch cast a Force of Will, it doesn't trigger your Opus. If you cast anything with Dream Halls, it doesn't trigger your Opus. If you delve and cast a Treasure Cruise, unless you paid 5 actual mana, it doesn't trigger Opus. But I think with this card specifically, it doesn't matter that much. We're probably fine. Just
with this one, I don't think it's as important, but there will be some further on. But yeah, I don't want to touch on that just because it's the first time we're seeing Opus as a mechanic. We have another card now, James. Talk to us about Flow State. I know some people are quite high on this little uncommon.
Yeah, this one's a bit of a banger, I think. So Flow State is 1 blue for a sorcery. It says, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. However, if there is an instant card and a sorcery card in your graveyard, instead put 2 of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom in any order. This card's super powerful. So sort of the most similar effect we have at the moment is Expressive Iteration, which sees really extensive play and is one of the better is its gold cards, even in the most powerful cubes. And that is quite a bit worse than this when it is on, right? Because getting 2 in hand is way better than 1 in hand and 1 you have to cast this turn. Plus, it's only 1 color. Like, sure, it's not going to be on turn 2, but that's fine. You're generally not casting your card draw spells on turn 2 that often. And in the right deck, by turn 3 or 4, this probably will be on. And you just need to make sure you have some good, cheap, interactive spells that can stock up your graveyard. And I think this is going to be really, really powerful. Like, it's not going to be one for every deck, but in the deck that wants this, it'll be one of your better cards.
Yeah, I'd agree. Like, there's room in every cubes for like a 2-mana blue card that draws us more cards. The ones that we're kind of running already are cards like Charter Course, which I think is differently good. Like, the fact they can go in like a reanimated deck or a discard deck, I quite like. But the other one that sees a lot of play is Start the TARDIS. This one isn't a Universes Beyond card, which will be a real thing for a lot of players. This is an uncommon as well. My gut is that this will get tested in quite a lot of cubes. Part of me does like Charter Course and Start the TARDIS a little more. Start the TARDIS is Surveil 2, draw a card, you may Planeswalk, ignore that part. But it has Jumpstart as well, so you can kind of do it again. I know, like it's in the Is It Spells deck, I think this is specifically better. Generically, I think the other ones might have a bit more play, but there's probably a world where in a 540 cube we can run 3 of these. I don't know, like these seem pretty good to me. I'd imagine Flow State. It's similar to like Erode in that it's just going to be a very solid card. And also, I've famously said that Stock Up was a bad Magic card, so I will take James's lead on blue cantrips.
I think this is more stock up than Start Retardus is my take.
Good to hear. Cool. Yeah, I will probably swap it out then. Right, we have for our last blue card of the day, we have Sky Coach Conductor. It is 2 and a blue for a 2/3 creature bird pilot with flash, flying, vigilance, and this creature enters prepared. It has the spell All Aboard, which is a single blue for an instant to exile target non-pilot creature you control, then return that creature to the battlefield under its owner's control. So I don't think this is one for the highest power level cubes. Like, for me, this is effectively, like, because it has flash and the ability is and the spell is an instant. Effectively, this is an instant speed flicker effect on a creature. In most cubes, that will be a nice effect, and most of the time that's going to play out like the protection line that we kind of talked about earlier. It'll play a bit kind of similar to like a Glen Alendra, that kind of thing. And as always, resetting ETBs can be quite nice. In cube supporting Flicker, I think this might be the last time we talk directly about Flicker. This will be quite nice because it is just another one of these effects that's also on a creature. Like when James was talking about Daydream at the start, you do need some of these effects on creatures because you do have to attack and block at some point in the game. This is a 3-mana 2/3 with Vigilance. That's quite a nice statted body. Also, in cubes with Flicker, there will be other cards that can flicker this and reset it. Like, it's not infinite, but like this with a card like Felidar Guardian or like any creature that kind of ETBs and flickers something, like you are limited by blue mana, but there's going to be some stuff you can do with that, like Impact Tremors, pump a load of blue mana into it, deal them damage. Like, there's things you can do with this, basically. Yeah. For me, this gets in if you have Flicker and Blink in a cube. Outside of that, I think just there's a lot of good blue 3-drops. And I think that might keep it out of the highest power level cubes. But solid Magic card. Yeah. What do you think, James?
Yeah, I quite like this guy if you're trying to push the Flicker thing. Yeah, when we talked about, was it Daydream, the first card we reviewed? This is like more what I want from that effect, because when it doesn't all line up for you to do your Flicker thing proactively, this is still a real Magic card. You can flash it in, you can maybe ambush an attacker. It can attack, it can block, it has text, right? Plus, the thing's an instant. It basically how this reads is it's almost like do you remember Flag Bearers? It's like a Flag Bearer, right? The first removal spell.
James.
Yeah. The first
Proper
removal
magic.
Spell has to go at this, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They can't try and kill anything else because you can just flicker it and protect it. So yeah, I think this is pretty good for a Flicker deck. And then you obviously have that upside of you can like play this, flicker your, I don't know, Ravenous Chupacabra or whatever it might be, get a bunch of value that way. That's great. But you're not sort of priced into doing it at sorcery speed on your turn. You have a bunch of flexibility in how you want to do that, which is really nice. Having said that, if you're not super leaning into the Flicker thing, there are better 3-drops in blue. Something like the Glenlendra Guardian, I think it was, from Lorwyn Eclipse.
Yeah.
Like just a bit higher impact from this in outside of a fairly dedicated Flicker deck, right? And very much in the same space.
Was that the last set?
The last set, if you don't count the Turtle.
Right. Okay. Cool. What a year. Cool. All right. Let's move on to black. James, we have another new mechanic, actually. Talk to us about Decorum Desertion. No,
we
that's
sure
wrong.
do.
Talk to us about Decorum Dissertation.
Yeah. Lots of people do desert their dissertations, so maybe a Freudian slip there.
I was a media student, my boy. All coursework.
Phenomenal work. Decorum Dissertation is 3 black for a sorcery lesson. You have lessons in this version of Strixhaven, just not learn. Says target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. So we're on the old 5-mana Sign in Blood, which is a bit pricey, but it has a new keyword called Paradigm. Paradigm says Then exile this spell. After you first resolve a spell with this name, you may cast a copy of it from exile without paying its mana costs at the beginning of each of your 8 main phases. So for people who've played with Epic, this is kind of like Epic, but without the downside.
They fixed Epic. Yeah.
You just get a copy of this every turn for the rest of the game, as long as you want it. It's a pretty interesting mechanic. It's this will win you the game if given long enough. It's really powerful, but it's 5 mana. You're not affecting the board with your 5 mana. You're dealing yourself damage with your 5 mana. So you really need to be very confident that the rest of your deck is really well set up to stabilize the game and has a ton of cheap interaction and ways to keep you alive. But once that first copy is resolved, they can't really stop this value train. Normally when you have repeatable card draw, it's on, a planeswalker, an artifact, or something, and they can remove that and disrupt it. There's not really any disruption for this. Even permission doesn't work once the first copy is resolved, right? Because sure, they could counter it for 1 turn, but it will come back. So there is something to be said for that. It's nice if you have a little bit of life gain as well, just because the 2 damage, there will only be so many times you can take that life hit. Also worth noting, this in the right spot, if your opponent is short on life or cards, can be a win condition in a longer game. You can at some point just be like, cool, well, my opponent has like 6 cards left in their library. I'm going to target them twice. I don't think they can kill me. Or my opponent is at 6. And sure, they're going to draw a bunch of cards, but I'm well set up to defend myself, and I don't think they can kill me quickly enough. So yeah, I think this is cool. It's probably not for the most powerful cubes, just because it's too slow and too bad when you're behind. But I think it's like an interesting one to try in slightly slower cubes. It is a lot of inevitability.
Yeah, it is a lot of card draw. I think you're right in terms of, like, for higher power level cubes, it's just too expensive. Like in the more higher power level cubes, just like, well, are we casting this on turn 5, and then when is the game ending? If that makes sense. Like this needs to go in a cube where we cast this on turn 5 and we're still drawing cards like 3 turns later, on average, I think, is a way of putting it. I did have some notes about Doomsday, but I don't think it's good there, because it still has the issue of, yes, I can cast this and then cast my Doomsday, but then I still have to untap, and that's, for me, the biggest issue with those kind of piles. As you were talking, I did have one thought. How does this work with Hull Breacher, James? Hull Breacher, if an opponent would draw a card except for the first one they draw on each of their draw steps, instead you create a treasure token. Does this become they lose 2 life and you get 2 treasure every turn?
Yeah, if you've got a Hull Breacher player, that works. That's nice.
I quite like that. That's kind of a weird control package. That could be quite fun. And I guess if you are doing anything where you are cheating on spells, like specifically Dream Halls, like the other paradigm we're going to talk about, I think is quite good in Dream Halls. This one is okay. Like it's not as good as a wheel effect, but it does still draw you cards. Potentially, then, it's a cool one. And also with this, it is a lesson. They haven't put any learn cards in this set. Like learn, we saw in original Strixhaven. Learn is when you cast a spell with learn, you can reveal a lesson from your sideboard and put it into your hand. I'm assuming at some point we're going to see learn again. When we do, these cards get better.
Yeah, I think we will do a episode at some point on the whole learn lesson package. I think it is actually kind of interesting for Cube, even as it is at the moment. So yeah, these additional lessons will be quite interesting there.
No, 100%. And this is the first of 3 cards we're going to be talking about in black that I think are all nutso in Commander. Let's talk about the second one next. Let's talk about Emeritus of Woe. This is 3 and a black for a 5/4 creature, vampire, warlock. It enters prepared, and at the beginning of your end step, if 2 or more creatures died this turn, this creature becomes prepared. The spell that it casts is a sorcery, and it's quite a good one. It's 1 and a black, and it's Demonic Tutor. Search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle. James, when I first made my cube, I was running Skin Render. 4 mana, like 2/2 or 3/3 for some -1/-1 counters. What is this? Jesus. It's a 4 mana 5/4 with no downside. I think most of the time this will play out more like a 6-drop because, again, like we've said before, we don't want this getting removed. We are very sad if we just play this creature and it eats a not Doomblade variant. So we would want to get the value straight away. And then, similar to the blue one, like, I think it's quite easy to see a world where we're going to be Demonic Tutoring multiple times with this card. Like, if we just attack and they block and we trade off with a different creature, that's 2 or more creatures dying by your end step, and you get Demonic Tutor again. Like, that's really, really good. And similarly to the blue one, the blue Emeritus, I like the fact that I don't run Demonic Tutor I don't think I run Demonic Tutor in my unpowered Vintage Cube. I would run this. This is a nice power level. It gives you the hint of the powerful card without being the efficient powerful card. Again, also miserable in Commander. But, yeah, James, what do you think? I think this card's pretty good.
Yeah, this is pretty powerful. I don't understand why it's so big.
Yeah.
I read this card assuming it was like a 3/3, you know, and being perfectly happy with that. And then
why does it have more power than mana? It's not a green card.
Exactly.
It's a demon with no downs. Oh, the downside is it doesn't have flying. There you go. It's a demon.
Yeah. It does have a great hat, though. Yeah, no, this is really pushed. It's interesting because I think the Ancestral card, you'll like almost always cast it and cast the spell right away. I think this, because it's 4 to 6, is like you will sometimes just run it out as the 4-drop, right? And be like,
that's fair.
It's really big. I don't have my 6 mana rolled up right now. I'm just going to play this. If I untap with it, it's going to be really powerful.
Yeah. I guess if your opponent's a Gruul deck and you like what they're going to do, like double burn spell it or something like that, you're a bit happier in those kind of environments, I guess.
Yeah. Like, you know, if I had a bunch of other good stuff to do that turn, I might do that stuff and try and wait to play this on 6. But if I didn't have great plays, like, yeah, you can absolutely just run this out, right? It's pretty powerful, I think, whichever way you do it. It's also quite nice that it doesn't have to be in play when the creatures die. So if you are at 6, right, you can go to attacks, you make your attacks, your opponent blocks in a normal way and trades. Then post-combat, you play this, you have your 6 mana, you DT right away, you go to your end step, and it will become prepared again right away.
Jesus. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, because obviously if this is in play, your opponent's going to try quite hard to not have 2 creatures die on your turn. But if you play it post-combat, they don't know it's coming, so that's quite nice. Plus, honestly, once you get the first DT off, you can probably get something that sets up being able to DT again quite nicely. I could also certainly see spots where your first DT gets like an animate dead or something to get this back, assuming they kill it, because if they don't kill it, you're going to be in great shape anyway. Yeah, this is really powerful. I think it's one people will be trying in a lot of cubes. Whether it ends up making the cut in like super, super high power level cube, I suspect it probably will, but you know, the competition's really tough. Like, it's probably not better than like Shieldred, for example, but maybe there's room for 1 or 2 more expensive black cards.
Yeah, this is definitely one I think people are going to be trying. And yeah, as I mentioned, I think it's one they'll try in the powerful cubes, but if it falls out of favor there, it will probably still be in mind. Like, I'm just looking at this inverter of truth in my cube, being like, I need to make those updates we talked about a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that checks out.
All right, but James, take it away with the third of our black cards, that I'm going to see in every game of Commander I play for the next number of years. Talk to us about Grave Researcher.
Yeah, I believe that. Grave Researcher is 2 and a black for a 3/3 creature troll warlock. Says, at the beginning of your upkeep, surveil 1. Then, if there are 3 or more creature cards in your graveyard, this creature becomes prepared. And the associated spell we can cast when it's prepared is Reanimate. So that's the single black sorcery. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose life equal to that card's mana value. So this is obviously one where we can't prepare it right away, right? It doesn't become prepared until your next upkeep, even if you have a really stocked graveyard. So we're always running this out, and they have an opportunity to kill it. That's fine. It's a free drop. They're allowed to kill your free drops. And if it sticks around, this is pretty powerful. Firstly, Surveil 1 on your upkeep is just really nice. Anyone who has resolved a search for Canton, that's a lovely feeling. And then it's not that tough in a creature-heavy black deck. Maybe you're milling yourself a bit on top of this. You will get to your free creatures before too long. Listen, this isn't one you're going... Despite saying the word Reanimate on the card, this is not a card for Reanimator, because it's not a reliable enough reanimation effect for it to be sort of justify you putting giant 8-mana uncastable creatures in your deck. What this is, though, is a really nice value card for a black deck that has a lot of creatures, is going to be milling itself a lot. You don't need to be reanimating 8 drops. You can reanimate 3 drops and be very happy with your life. Plus, it's there will be spots, right? Because this is repeatable, right? You get your first reanimate. If you then still have 3 creatures for next turn, you can just reanimate again. So it may well be that your first reanimate actually wants to go on a creature in their graveyard, because then you're still leaving your 3 creatures in your graveyard, so you prepare it again next turn. And it can just end up being a really nice little engine that way. Yeah, all in all, it's a 3-mana 3/3 that they kind of have to kill pretty quickly in a lot of games, and that's just a good card.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I do want to touch on, though, like you mentioned this not being a card for Reanimator, but I do possibly like the potential of where this could take Reanimator in not the most powerful cubes. Because like in my unpowered vintage cube, for example, the way I've powered down Reanimator is I have kept the good reanimation spells, but powered down the targets. So I don't have Grizzlebrand, I have like Troll of Khazad-dûm and like Grave Titan and such. Like that's as beefy as we get. There is a world where we could swap that around, where it's basically it's a different lever to control the power level of Reanimator. I'd be tempted with this in my Treat Yourself cube, which is slower, where basically like I don't have Grizzlebrand in my Treat Yourself cube. I have things like Vein Ripper, Kukushko, and like Avatar of Woe. And the reason I haven't done that is because like quick reanimating a Grizzlebrand it's too efficient, basically. But what I like about Grave Researcher is it gives you the feeling of it being efficient by letting you cast Reanimate, but you're doing it on turn 4. And there is a world where basically what I'm saying is maybe it's a different lever where instead of keeping the high-powered reanimation spells and lowering the targets, we slow down the reanimation spells and power up the targets. That could be a quite fun way of doing it, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I guess the thing I struggle with the idea of like trying to cheat in something with Giant with this is that as well as having your few really big creatures, you also just need your deck to be really creature dense, right? You need like 15 creatures or something because you're trying to surveil into creatures or mill over creatures. You need to get 3 creatures in the graveyard, not just the one giant thing. And that seems like kind of tricky they just seem like 2 difficult things to overlap to me in certain spots. I guess maybe if you're running something like Dread Return, then it's like you have reasons to have cheap creatures in your deck and have expensive creatures in your deck. That's maybe an interesting angle you could go down. And then you're more leaning into like recurring nightmare stuff. That could be kind of cool. Yeah, certainly gives you some options anyway.
Yeah, I think it's a cool one. As someone who plays a lot of graveyard shenanigans-y decks, for me, having 3 creatures... For me, the personal challenge of having 3 creatures in my graveyard on turn 4 is not a challenge. But I do, that is me going all in on a bunch of strategies, which I know isn't traditionally how Reanimator go. You put one big thing in the graveyard, not a bunch of little things. I do.
Yeah. It's not good in that like sort of combo control Reanimator deck, I guess, is the point I'm making. But yeah, there's certainly different builds where you can make it work.
All right, I think it's me next. Let's move on to our next card. Maseo Vane's New Dean. This is 2 and a black for a 2/1 legendary creature, bird, skeleton, warlock, with flying, and when it enters, create a 1/1 black and green pest insect creature token with whenever this token attacks, you gain 1 life. It also has Infusion, which is another new mechanic, I think. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained life this turn, return up to 1 target creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of life you've gained this turn. So I think this is a cool card. The base level of 3 mana for 3 flying over 2 bodies is okay. That won't get it into the most powerful cubes, but it will. Like, that's a fine level for lower powered or more budget environments. Similar to some of the other cards we've gone over, where this gets better is if we have ways of gaining life in our deck. And I don't just mean specifically like Soul Sisters, like that would be okay, but like I think this is a decent card in something like Aristocrats, specifically where we have cards like Blood Artists that gain us life when creatures die. Like this could be a nice little engine piece, because like go with me on this. Like we play our Doom Traveler, we play our Blood Artist, we play this. And a sack outlet. We have our engine. We sack our Doom Traveler. At the end of turn, we've gained a life from the Blood Artist. We bring the Doom Traveler back. We're cooking.
Oh, you're speaking my language. Yeah, that sounds great.
Like that seems like a cool engine, but like that, what I've just listed, will exist in a bunch of cubes. This struggles to get into a cube that has like a Barrow Goyf in it, for example. But like in cubes that are doing more synergy, I think this is going to be a solid card for those environments.
Yeah, I'd go with that. Aristocrats really likes it if its engine-y card also incidentally gives it a bit of fodder along the way. So that makes this quite appealing in that deck. Plus, like, it's like a black preening champion. Preening champion's great. Yeah, I could see this seeing some play in like mid-power level stuff if you've got Aristocrats going. I actually think it's kind of more of an Aristocrats card than a straight life gain card, because the straight life gain deck just doesn't necessarily gonna fuel its graveyard that well enough to have stuff to bring back. Whereas the Aristocrats deck, you can sack stuff, get it back. If that has an ETB or whatever, you'll get accumulating some value quite nicely.
Nice. Yeah, it does seem like a solid one. All right, we have one more black card, James. Talk to us about Scheming Silver Tongue.
Yeah, so Scheming Silver Tongue is 1 black for a 1/3 creature vampire warlock. Has flying and lifelink, so 2 mana, 1/3 flying lifelink. Not a bad start. And at the beginning of your second main phase, if you gained 2 or more life this turn, this creature becomes prepared. And the associated spell is Sign in Blood. So that's black. Target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. Best used on your opponent when at 2, but can certainly also draw you some cards. This, I think, is nice if you're really leaning into the life gain thing specifically, because yes, that means it's going to become prepared, but it's also a nice enabler for the life gain stuff, right? At just 2 mana, 1/3 flying lifelink, it's almost always going to get to attack for most of the early game and give you that little bit of extra life gain. And a lot of the life gain payoffs don't actually care that much about how much life you gained. They care about how many individual instances of you gaining a life there were. So it can be sort of an enabler and a little bit of card advantage in those decks. Outside of a pretty dedicated life gain deck, I'm not that interested. I think there are just better options, and like you need to find an extra point of life gain to prepare this. You could do that by buffing its power or by gaining life some other way. But even if you make that work, the payoff just isn't that good, right? You're getting a Sign in Blood. It's nice, but it's nothing to write home about.
Yeah, for me, of all the prepared cards we talked about, this is the hardest sell so far. Just because every other one we've talked about, it feels like they can just be prepared in the deck, like in any deck naturally. Like the Reanimate one, you just have to have some creatures in the graveyard. That will happen in a game of Magic. The Demonic Tutor one, 2 creatures have had to die in a game of Magic. That will happen. This specifically, like, it only has 1 point of power. So the lifelink, it needs something else to gain life to work. If you have that in your cube, like, if it's Aristocrats or if it's life gain, I think this becomes more interesting and becomes a nice little reward and a payoff for those life gain decks. But yeah, that for me, you have to actively be supporting that. It can't just be like, I have a Blood Artist in my cube. People can make it work. For me, my gut is you have to actually be trying to support rewarding people for gaining life in some way for this to be good, basically, is my gut.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I do like the design, though. I think it's much cooler when they design cards that don't solve their own puzzle, and you have to put in a little bit of work. But yeah, I think with this one, the payoff just isn't... Could have done with a little more juice,
Yeah, I'd agree. Also worth mentioning that I was saying about the lifelink, it does go up in my estimates if we have ways of buffing its power. Like, if we can put a counter on it, then it will trigger itself every turn by life gaining 2. If we can put an equipment on it that buffs its power, I like it more. Just some things to like, even like vampire synergy. If you have like vampire lords buffing up its power, I like it more. It just needs something. You need something to work with it, basically, is what I'm saying.
I'm interested in this. Turn 3 Vampire Nighthawk.
Ooh.
Turn 4 attack with Nighthawk. Cast this, immediately Sign in Blood.
Marvellous. You've done
It's over.
It's
over.
Oh, I miss casting Vampire Nighthawk, but that's a conversation for a future episode. All right, let's move on to red. We have our last Emeritus for the day, but don't worry, there'll be another one next week. Emeritus of Conflict is 1 and a red for a 2/2 creature human wizard with first strike, and whenever you cast your 3rd spell each turn, this creature becomes prepared. The spell it casts when it is prepared is Lightning Bolt. A single red for an instant. Lightning Bolt deals 3 damage to any target. So, for me, I put this closer to the white one than the blue and the black one. Primarily because just that casting 3 spells is tricky. Like, in a cube with a lot of cantrips, lots of cheat spells, lots of baubles, I think this will see play and will probably be decent. Like, I don't think this gets into the Mego Vintage Cube because I do think the again, just 2 drops in red is quite... The competition on 2, and especially 3, if we want to do the bolt the same turn, is quite tricky. The power level it's probably best in is something like mine, my unpowered Vintage Cube, a cube that's running all the good cantrips, but isn't running the most powerful cards. That's probably where it sees, or could see the most play. My gut is in lower power level cubes. We're just not going to have the density of cheap spells to activate this. And, like, we have to activate this at least once to be anywhere near happy with it. Like, once you get the ball rolling, it's a little easier. Like, one thing you touched on with me the other day is that, yeah, like, if this is prepared, we can cast the Lightning Bolt, and then we only have to cast 2 more spells that turn for it to be unprepared again. That's a nice little engine. Like I think this is going to be better in formats that aren't singleton, because if you have multiples, they will work quite nicely once you get the first one going. That's quite a nice little engine. Like, having 2 or 3 of these out, once they're prepared, they will then trigger each other. That's quite solid. But in singleton, like I'm just looking at kind of similar cards that kind of reward us for casting spells, and like they printed Corey Steelcutter like in the last 12 months. Like, for me, this one's a bit of a tougher sell compared to the other ones that we touched on. But I'm open to being wrong. What do you think of Emeritus of Conflict, James?
I think it's interesting. I kind of want to try it in some powerful cubes, but I'm very open to the idea that it might just be bad. Partly, every time they print these spells, these cards that ask you to cast multiple spells in a turn, they're always better than I think they're going to be. Like, Steel Cutter's kind of broken, VV's really strong. Even like Sage of the Skies is just really overperformed in every cube I've seen it in. That's the 3-mana, 2/3 flying lifelink where you get a copy of it if it's your second spell of the turn. Listen, casting 3 spells is way harder than casting 2 spells. So this might be, a step too far in that theme. But when the build around is they tell you to put a bunch of cheap cards in your deck, that's what you should have been doing anyway, Cheap cards are always great. The more I see him play against like Lurrus, it is it's a good thing, not of restraint. Right, exactly. It's just enforcing discipline. And you're quite right, but once it gets going, the first time you prepare it, then you don't have to snap off the bolt right away necessarily. You can maybe save it till your next turn, then it contributes towards that spell count and getting it prepared again. Multiples does sound sick. I can imagine like you Fimage this and then you just get a little engine going. That could be really sick. Listen, it might well be too cute because it's, if you don't prepare it, it's a 2-mana 2/2 first strike, which is not brilliant. And it kind of, maybe more like mid-power level cube, but it needs to be a decently high power level cube, so you need to have that density of cheap spells,
you really do,
so it kind of wants to be in a cube with like baubles and Gitaxian Phobes and some pitch cards. But I'd be interested to try it, but it may well be bad. This is the one I have like the highest degree of uncertainty on, I think.
No, I'd agree. Like the multi-spelling cards, they are very dependent and they can be quite snowbally, but open to giving this one a test anyway. All right, James, talk to me about Flashback. It's finally a card.
So Flashback is single red mana for an instant. It does exactly what you'd expect it to do. It says target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback until end of turn. That flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. This is pretty interesting. So paying 1 mana to get the best spell out of your yard is a pretty good deal in a spell-heavy deck. It's just going to give you a lot of options in the mid to late game. Particularly nice in a prowess deck or any deck that cares about casting multiple spells in a turn. Very nice with the red dude we just talked about, actually. Because it's essentially wrapping up casting 2 spells in one, right? So if you're triggering anything along the way, you're kind of doubling up that value. It's pretty good. It is, in most blue-red decks, probably just a worse version of Snapcaster Mage. Like, in general, the 2/1 is going to be worth more than the extra mana. But there's absolutely no reason you can't play both. This doesn't just go in blue-red by any means. Like, I could imagine a sort of black-red grindy deck just playing this, because in the late game, sometimes I want to cast a Thoughtseize, sometimes I want to cast my removal spell, sometimes I want to cast my card draw spell. This just gives me options, right? Plus, it's just a nice in combo decks, right? Like, you just get that little bit of redundancy. All of a sudden it's less bad when they manage to Thoughtseize away your Doomsday or whatever it is that you're trying to go off with, right? This just gives you another option to get that back. So I quite like this. I think it'll see a lot of play.
Yeah, it's just so cheap. Like, I don't think it's like an obvious staple because you do have to find room for it. But yeah, I quite like it. Like I think it gets better the more powerful the cube is. Like the base level in most cubes is like, oh, it gets back the removal spell, it gets back the card draw spell. If this is getting back your flash or your reanimate or your time walk, then that's definitely like up a notch, if that makes sense. Like that's definitely more powerful. My only complaint is that I wish this had flashback for 2 and a red. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But maybe that was
very powerful.
That card would slap. Yeah. That's the Modern Horizons version. But yeah. I'm quite high on this card. I'm probably gonna I'm going to be giving this a test. I think it's going to be quite fun. Just giving the Snapcaster Mage comparison. I think is spot on. But yeah, just it opening up to other decks like a Gruul deck or you mentioned Rakdos deck. Like that's just nice. I'm here for that. All right, let's keep it going. We have a very expensive red card next with Improvisation Capstone. It is 5 red for a sorcery lesson. It says, exile cards from your library until you exile cards with total mana value 4 or greater. You may cast any number of spells from among them without paying their mana costs. And also, it has Paradigm. So again, that is the one where you get to cast a copy on your first main phase for the rest of the game. So I think this is a cool card. I'm personally higher on this one than the black one. And I'm saying this out the bat, though, that we're not ramping to 7 and casting this. For me, I'm putting this in a deck that's looking to cheat big spells. So we've talked about Dream Halls today. We talked about Mizzix Mastery, that kind of deck. Like, there is really a big drop-off in terms of quality of expensive instants and sorceries for that deck. Like, after our ultimatums, after our extra turn spells, we're onto things like Blood for the Blood God and that kind of stuff. Like, this isn't as good as, like, those or, like, wheel effects, but it is cool. Like, the fact it's 4 or more, like, we can hit a bunch. We could hit 4 1-drops and put them into play. Or we could hit an 8-drop, but we're still putting that into play or casting it. That's quite nice. This is definitely one of those Dream Hall-site cards where we don't win the game immediately when we do it. But if you're doing Dream Halls in your slower cube, like I'm doing it in my Treat Yourself cube, I think this is big and fun there, and I'm kind of here for it in those kind of environments. Like I don't think it's the most efficient spell. It's probably not going to get into like super high power level cubes, but like if you have time to do a thing and then the game continues afterwards while you do more cool stuff, this is very much in that vein.
Yeah, I think this is sweet. It's very high variance, right?
Yes.
Sure, if in the scenario where like you cast this and you're under no pressure, sure, it'll win you the game. But there will be plenty of games where you are under pressure, you get to cast this, and you kind of need the first one to hit pretty well. And there will be times when it does a ton, and there will be times where it does next to nothing, right? The good scenario is actually the first spell you hit is like a 2 or a 3 mana spell, because then you get to keep flipping and you go again. So you could hit like, say, a 3 mana spell, and then you flip again and you hit a 5-drop, and now you're casting like 8 mana's worth of spells. But you could also just like hit, here's my card draw spell, and now I die because I didn't affect the board with my 7 mana. But like that's kind of fun as well, and if you get to survive a couple of turns with this going off, it will win you the game. Kind of the only thing I guess to say as well, though, is if you're playing it in that combo style deck, just bear in mind you need enough other gas in your deck when you cast this to actually end the game. Like there are scenarios where you end up with too much of it in hand, or you or something got cancelled or whatever, and you could end up just decking yourself with this if you just don't have the win cons, right?
Yeah. Yes, 100%. Yeah, I do see that. Sorry, I had something to say. I guess anything just to add actually is like what you were saying about hitting the 3 first, then the 4. Like this does get better with top of deck manipulation. So cards like Brainstorm, cards like Jace the Mind Sculptor, thinking of it like that's actually quite nice. If you can manipulate the top of your library so you know what you're hitting. I mean, I have just said basically, like in the world I'm playing this, we already have a Dream Halls in play, so maybe that's not the. Don't worry about it; it's fine. It'll be fun and it'll be good. But yeah, cool splashy card.
Oh, you know what is sick with this actually? Imagine you have Sensei's Top in play when you cast this, right? So then you, I guess it's. No, I was thinking you could like cast the top and then activate it again, but it's all happening at once, isn't it? But it is still kind of nice with top that you can set it up a little bit and then put your top on top, and then you get the top back straight away.
Yeah, stuff like that is very yeah. any kind of deck, any kind of top of deck manipulation is going to make this card better. And also, as we mentioned with all of these, it is a lesson. Put a pin in this card. We'll come back to it later. What do you think of our next card, James? What do you think about Maelstrom Artisan?
I'm not that sold on it, but let's read it anyway. Maelstrom Artisan is 1 red for a creature Minotaur sorcerer. Has haste, it enters prepared, and the attached spell it can cast is Rocket Volley, which is 1 red sorcery, destroy target non-basic land. The thing is, the mana denial stuff is only really good early in most games. So you're not really waiting for 5 to cast this. You could cast it on turn 3, but the problem is, it has haste, but at 3/2, it's not surviving combat that often. So if you want to keep it around to cast for Rocket Volley next turn, you're probably not attacking with it because you don't want to trade. And then if your opponent's is going to have a big problem with the land destruction part of the card, then there's a pretty good chance they can just kill this, right? It's 2 toughness. And yeah, you can't really be waiting for 5 mana to cast your land destruction. It's obviously sort of reminiscent of a card like Avalanche Riders, which I feel like people have more nostalgia. People have a lot of nostalgia from Avalanche Riders.
Ooh.
It is, even in like pretty low power, what we'd call fairly low power level cubes now, Avalanche Riders is a pretty bad card, I would say. I'm sure that'll bring me some hate, but it kind of is. The only time it actually feels good is when you can flicker it. And this doesn't work with flickering particularly. I mean, it does in that, like,
it does, but
you can prepare it again, but you have to pay off your 2 mana for the Rocket Volley every time. I'm not that high on it.
No, I would agree. I added this to the list, and because basically lands are getting too good, and I like the idea of blowing up triomes. For me, Pillage is too weak, Blood Moon is too strong. I think we are getting to a point where there can be something in the middle. Like, yes, we obviously have Strip Mine and Wasteland, but we don't really have it. Like, land destruction used to be something that was part of Red's color identity, and I think this isn't the answer, if I'm honest. Like, I agree with the other thing you said in terms of just power level not going to get there, and like in the power level of Cube, where this is good, it doesn't need the land destruction because you don't have the Tolarian Academy, the Gaia's Cradle. You don't have necessarily the Triome fetch mana base, that kind of stuff. But it is a type of effect that I am after, I think, in my cube. But yeah, maybe. Yeah, this specifically one doesn't get there by itself.
Yeah, for sure. I quite like the Obsidian Charmor in that slot. It's for like big dragon that, like, 5 mana dragon kills a non-basic on the way in. Gets a bit cheaper for half-colorless lands. That card's kind of good.
All right, but it's me up next with Molten Core Maestro. This is 1 red for a 2/2 creature Goblin Bard with Menace and Opus. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell, put a +1 counter on this creature. If 5 or more mana was spent to cast a spell, add an amount of red equal to this creature's power. So this is a cool little Miracle Grow creature. If you play it early in the game, it will grow pretty quickly, but just by you playing Magic. Like, you're a red X deck, you're going to have Burn, you're going to have card draw if you're in blue, you're going to have Removal if you're in black, you're going to have Ramp if you're in green. Like, this will just get bigger and become a pretty solid threat. Like, the fact it has built-in Menace, I do quite like. If this becomes a 4-powered Menace creature, you're going to be pretty happy with it, and I think that's going to happen pretty easily. The ability to make mana, I think, is nice. I don't think it's going to come up anywhere near as often as it's like, it's not why it gets into a cube or gets into a lot of decks, but it is some additional. It's a nice effect, and I think I said this in a set review recently, where this card is not VV, but we have seen that those type of effects are strong. And I can't remember the card I talked about it in Turtles, but there definitely was a card recently that does a similar effect to VV. And if we're just getting some redundancy on that, then that is quite nice. Like, yes, with this one we have to cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, which is probably going to be, I'm guessing, a card draw spell. Something like a big card draw spell in blue, something like that. Make a bunch of red mana, then we can cast the cards we've drawn. That is quite nice. I like that idea. But my gut is that kind of the make mana part is probably going to be flavor a lot of the time. Like, it will come up, but it's not why you're putting it in a cube, I think. Like, this is an aggressive creature that grows. That's why it gets in a cube, with the potential upside of it's our second or third worst copy of VV. But what do you think, James? What do you think of Molten Core Maestro?
Yeah, I think this seems really pushed to me, actually. I'm not really at all fussed about the 5 CMC part. Not that it isn't powerful, just that I think the decks that want this don't have expensive cards. But as a grow threat, this Menace is so good on your grow threats, because generally how those cards play out, right, is that they're kind of okay for the first turn or two they're in play. They're not amazing, but then at a certain point they get huge and your opponent starts chump blocking them and trying to find a removal spell. And this, they have to throw 2 creatures in the way, which is not really going to be sustainable for most decks. Yeah, I think the Menace is huge. Also, like, 2 mana, 2/2 Menace just isn't a terrible starting point. Like, you play this on turn 2, even if you just cast 1 spell on turn 3, your 2-drop is a 3/3 Menace. That's really good. Yeah, but I think this is very pushed. It's kind of, it's Quirion Dryad in 2026, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. All right, James, what do you think about Nocturnamoon Lore Spinner? I really like this card personally, but
yeah, I think it's cool. So Nocturnamoon Lore Spinner is 2 and a red for a 3/3 creature jackal wizard. Says at the beginning of your upkeep, if a player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, this creature becomes prepared and casts Wheel of Fortune. 2 and a red, each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. Best Jackal we have had in a while. It's like Jackal Pup went to school, you know? And let's cast Wheel of Fortune. That's
I like it even more. They finally make me like Jackal Pup even more. They gave me a Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, this is cool. It's slightly tough, right, in that what deck wants it? I guess the answer is it is maybe just a red aggro card secretly, because this doesn't replace Wheel of Fortune in your normal wheel decks, right? Like, because you don't get it until your upkeep. They have an opportunity to kill this. That means you kind of don't want to put it in your spell-based decks, because your opponents will just have removal spells that you haven't given them good targets for yet, and will snap it off on this. Plus, you have to get empty-handed or close to it. But I can kind of see it in your super low curve red beatdown deck. This is like one of the last cards you play. Maybe that's something. Like, I don't think it's super powerful, but it is cool, and that's enough reason to try it, maybe.
Yeah, you're right. Like, it doesn't go in classic wheel decks because it's just not reliable. It also doesn't go in a bunch of other decks that care about wheels. So, like, there's some combo decks that want wheels. This isn't going to go there. It's not going to go in, like, Madness, because part of the Madness plan is to have cards in your hand when you discard them. And this, you can't have... You can only have 1 card in hand in order to trigger this. Therefore, it's not really going to work. Like, yes, you can hope your opponent doesn't have cards in hand, but I don't like the relying on my opponent curving out better than me to make my card good. That doesn't seem great. So yeah, I think you're right. Like, for me, effectively, this is more a card for lower powered cubes and more budget environments. Hopefully this card is a little cheap. I'm hoping it will be, because it's just going to be a cool mono red aggro card where the plan is we're going to play some aggressive creatures and we're going to burn them out, and our 3-drop is this, our 4-drop is going to be a Hell Rider, and our deck is full of lightning bolts that go to the dome, and we're going to play this and play this with no cards left in our hand. We're going to draw 7 cards and burn them out and win. And I think that's cool. But that's the power level that this is, basically.
That is cool. And given we're a bit low power level, so we're allowed to play some kind of bad cards in our red beatdown deck, it's kind of interesting with, do you remember Razorkin Needlehead from Duskborn?
That does sound familiar.
It's like red, had a 2/2 first strike. Whenever your opponent draws a card, it deals one to
that's
them.
hot. Yeah.
So it's like already kind of a passable red beatdown creature, right? Because it triggers on red draw step as well. And then it's a little wombo combo with this, right? Where you get to 7 of them.
That's kind of tight. Yeah, I do like that. Maybe this is one I'm going to look at in mine. Like, yeah. I'm still in the. I know. We've done the episode on the updates I'm making to mine, but I haven't actually bought the cards yet, so there is time. So yeah, that could be quite tight. Let's move on to our last card of the day, Relic Retriever. This is 1 and a red for a 2/1 creature spirit monkey with first strike, and at the beginning of each end step, if a card left your graveyard this turn, create a treasure token. So there's been a few cards in this set that care about cards leaving the graveyard. This is the one that interests me the most. I'm going to caveat everything I'm going to say by saying I don't think this has a specific place in Cube yet, but I think it's growing. Like, ever since Insidious Roots got printed, there's been a bunch of cards that care about cards leaving the graveyard. They have generically been in Sultai colors, but we are getting the odd bit here and there in other colors. Like, there's, I think it's On Wings of Gold, there's a white card that does a similar thing. There's, and there was Gao Feral Youth from the Final Fantasy set, which also like dealt damage if a card left your graveyard this turn, that kind of stuff. So like, there is a growing number of these effects, and like, I'm not saying like these effects are cool because like they trigger from a bunch of stuff. Like, they trigger from like, maybe we're delving, maybe we're reanimating, maybe we're flashing back a spell like we've seen from this set. Think like more and more effects are triggering things to leave graveyards, and there's more and more cards being printed that care about cards leaving graveyards. If this exists, this is going to be a lower powered, more synergistic style of effect. And like, specifically with the Relic Retriever here, making a treasure token every turn is a nice upside, but it's not like game ending or game breaking. It does trigger like at every end step, including your opponent's. So there might be some little engine piece you can get there. Like that. I think there is a lantern or something like that moves a card from your graveyard to the bottom of your library. Maybe that's kind of where we're going with this. I'm not entirely sure. Like, basically, I added this to the list because base level 2 mana 2/1 first strike is going to be a fine base in lower powered level cubes. But I do think that like we are getting to a point where there is going to be a deck or an archetype based around these cards, and like there's a world where maybe it's the whole cube, because we've definitely seen it in Sultai, but maybe there's like a whole environment about cards moving around zones and stuff like that. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I wanted to mention it because it is something it is a trend we are seeing, and I think at some point soon we could have a deck for it.
Moving cards between game zones does sound like a good basis for a cube. I would play that. So this is very specifically what Lorehold is doing in this set. What Boris is doing. It's actually what it was doing last time in Strixhaven as well. It's just last time the theme didn't really work because all the cards were bad, and this time some of the cards look quite good. So I give the theme a lot more chance. Like this. If that deck exists, this could be a good role player in it. I like the Sultai version of that deck. I struggle to imagine there being like enough support in red at the moment, but yeah, maybe if we get a bunch more in the coming sets, it could be a thing. But yeah, I'd sort of, if it's just it's because that's what Lorehold does in Strixhaven, and that's why we've got some in this set, and then we don't see much more for a while, then I think it would struggle. Because you do need it to be pretty consistent, right? Like, if you compare this to, say, a card like Magda, which is just like 2 mana, 2/1, make a treasure on attacks, that's a lot more reliable than this is.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think there is something there, but yeah, something I wanted to bring attention to because it might be an episode we talk about in the future. Just if it becomes a deck, we will talk about it because I do like this type of environment, and I think we've all been a big fan of Insidious Roots in Cube, so always worth talking about. Marvelous. But I think that's going to end it for today. James, pleasure, man. Thank you for that. A bunch of cool cards that we went over today.
Yeah, always a pleasure. I think this seems like a very cool set, actually.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to pre-release. Mine is on Saturday because the ones in London sell out really quickly. But yeah, should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to opening it. There's a lot of cards I actually want from this set, which has been... maybe I shouldn't have bought that Lord of the Rings Warhammer. Who knows? I should have been saving my cash. But all good. But yeah, that's going to do it for today. Do remember to like the podcast, give us a 5-star review, all that good stuff. Tell a friend, especially, definitely helps out. Because next week we're going to be back with part 2, where we're going to be going over green, multicolored, and colorless. And there's been some bangers in this episode, and there's a bunch more bangers for us to come back to next week. So until then, it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from James, and we'll see you all soon. Goodbye.